Hello. Hello. My hellos are not nearly as musical as Karen's. I'm really tired tonight, but I'm finally home. Sorry for the delay in going live. I just got home. Did a whole bunch of crazy things today, but here we go. It is 9:10 on the day that the report has been released, and I'm here to answer some of your questions. But first, I'm going to let you see Clara's Halloween costume because it's really cute. That's my little devil. Wait, there she is. That's my little devil. Oh my God. That is really cute.
Cute.
You're really cute.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
There you go. All right.
Okay. Look,
You even got gloves. Oh my God, look at the old like Madonna gloves. Ooh. All right. Coming to you live from the incredibly clean and tidy office of the Ontario Autism Coalition. This is our headquarters. It's literally a room in my house.
All right, I'll let you.
You can't see
Can't.
what's going on. It's dark. Uh-oh. Oh, wait, no, Nita can see. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Nita.
Okay. Leah Maureen, can you see yet?
Sometimes.
Oh, she fixed it. Okay. All right. It's all good.
Yeah, no,
it's all
sometimes
good.
if it's early on in the live stream, you'll
Sometimes
have to
it's still dark.
reset it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're all
Okay,
good.
I'll let you get to it.
Thanks, Mia.
Bye, guys. Happy
Bye.
Halloween.
All right. So, hey, guys, holy crap. There's a whole bunch of you interested. So, while people are joining us, I'm just going to start with a little disclaimer. While I am no longer under a veil of secrecy about this report that came out today, did you guys notice how big it is? It's a really big report. I can talk about what's in it, and I can answer most of your questions. What I've asked is, I asked some of my colleagues on the executive to pull together what they thought were the 20 best questions for tonight, and I'll try to time myself and stick to no more than 5 minutes per question, and we'll get through as many of those as we can, and then there will definitely have to be a part 2 or a part 3 of this. So bear with me. I'm tired. Anika, or I don't know if it's Annika, this is a Facebook Live about the Autism Advisory Panel's report that was published today or released to the public today. And these are our recommendations about what a new Ontario autism program should be. I want to make it clear that I can't talk about individual discussions that happened at the panel. I can't tell you, did we vote on stuff, or did we, who took what position at the panel, or who said what. That would be really unprofessional. I want to let you know that I can only really talk about my perspective as a panelist and my understanding of what's in here. I don't speak for the Ministry of Community, Children and Social Services. Thank you. Say hi, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Show Bruce.
Production assistance.
Oh my goodness.
Broadcaster support.
Yep. Well, and
the wine is coming.
The wine is coming, and also the guy that I literally cannot live without. This is a team effort in every sense of the word. But back to sort of my disclaimers. I don't speak for the panel. I am one panelist. I'm not their spokesperson. I'm your president. But there are lots of people that served on this panel, and I want to give all of them a shout out, because this was a labor of love. This wasn't just 18 days in a conference room at Dundas University. This was 18 days plus phone calls, plus reading, plus research, so much reading, just looking at all of the submissions and that. It was a huge team effort, and I don't want to take, he's brought the wine. I have to warn you, stop teasing me.
No.
You're such a tease.
I'll come through.
Yeah, I do. I have to confess, I'm not going to be sipping this wine too hard right now, because if I do, I'll just fall asleep. But anyways, there's there's lots to unpack tonight. So I hope I've made it clear. You know, I'm speaking for me. I'll give you my perspective and my understanding of things. I don't speak for the ministry. I don't speak for the entire panel. And there's lots of questions that you guys have asked that I don't know the answer to yet either. So this will be a process. We'll go through this together. And anyways, I want to just get into this and start answering your questions as quickly as possible. So let me just push the laptop back, because I am going to need to flip through the report at times to help. So the first question on my list of the top 20 at 9 asked, what therapies are recommended, and why were some therapies like vision therapy and physiotherapy not included? So the therapies that are recommended are the therapies that treat the core symptoms of autism. And so those therapies include, obviously, applied behavioral analysis, speech language therapy, and occupational therapy. We looked at, a variety of different interventions, and, we went with the ones, well, two things. We looked at what the feedback was from the community. So we looked at data from the teletown halls and the online survey and the MPP roundtables, and our own survey data here in the OAC, and what parents said they wanted the most were those 3 services. And the other thing is that we had to look at which therapies were most evidence-based for treating the core symptoms of autism. So I know that there is perhaps some disappointment in the community about physiotherapy being taken out, but that's what I can tell you about the process. I'm sure the minister can answer more. The second question talks about developing capacity in the north. And forgive me, I can't move through this document as fast on paper as I can online. By the way, the best tool ever for looking at a document like this, if you don't already know this, is Control F for find on the document. Hi, Martha. Hi, Faith. Hi, Shiri. Hi, oh my God, it feels like that. Okay, how old are you guys? Do you know the show no, what was it called? Romper Room. And there was that lady with a looking glass, and she'd be like, I see Shiri and Dennis and Yvonne and Karen. And I'm dating myself, aren't I? You guys have no idea. Anyway, if you grew up in Toronto in the 70s and 80s, then you watched Romper Room. Anyway, there are, starting on page 21, we talk about targeted supports. And one of the things that really came through in the data that we looked at was the need to do better for marginalized communities. So northern communities, indigenous communities, rural communities. Annika, let me just pause to say here, these are the recommendations of what the government should fund. Oh, Tony gets the show. Of course Tony gets the show. But Annika, this is what we hope the government will be funding if they accept and implement all of our report, which I certainly hope they will. But to get back to the north, there's a whole set of recommendations about supporting Indigenous families. And on page 23, there's about 10 recommendations there talking about specific things that we recommend to target northern, rural, and remote families. The minister went to the north during his listening tour, and I know that he takes that very seriously. And I expect, as the program rolls out, you'll see some sort of northern strategy. Yes, Chantal, I think there's some stuff there. Okay, it's only one line, but it's on page 22. But a strong recommendation that French language services must be available across the province, and the ministry should invest in increased capacity to provide services in French. So yes, is the short answer. Number 3 on the question list tonight is the idea to go back to the regional provider model. And the short answer is we're not going back to an exclusively regional provider model, but we do want to see a continuation of what you guys know as regional programs and also DFO providers. We really think that there should be sort of a change in language, that when we used to talk about direct funding versus direct service, it made it sound as though DFO providers were private. And they never really were private, were they? Because they were receiving government money. So I hope we're going to start changing our language to talk about public providers, government agencies that are providing service, and independent providers. But the truth is they all receive public money. There is a recommendation. Okay, bear with me, guys. I'm actually going to go into the document online instead. Oh, wait, maybe I'm not. Damn it. I should have had that open before. Can you guys bear with me just while I pull open the report? Talk amongst yourselves. This is weird. There it is. Okay. Sorry, I just need something that I can look up keywords really quickly and move through the document. So just bear with me here. While I log in, find, whoops. Sorry guys, I know this is boring to watch. Public. Oh, why is it not letting me search? Damn it. Okay, I'll try to do this from memory. But there's a section about capacity building. Let me just get the table of contents here. Page 29 of the report, and we talk about the need to continue to allow what we've always called the regional service providers to do what they do, and if necessary to provide them with some funding to continue to provide those services. A gap analysis. I'm so sorry. What do we talk about? Oh, guys, it's been a long day. I'm so sorry. There's specific language in here about how funding needs to be continued to the public providers. So that we don't lose capacity and we don't continue to see those layoffs that we saw this spring when everything kind of went up in the air. I'm really sorry. I'll try to come back to that question later and see if I can find what you guys are asking about. Number 4, who is making the recommendation for numbers of hours of therapy? The answer to that is strongly and emphatically the clinicians. Sorry. When you live with 3 cats, okay, my cat just got the zoomies. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but he just ran down the hall rather violently, and I'm not really sure why. Natalie, yes, this is a program that is targeted at children and youth. The Ontario Autism Program only goes up to 18. And so while we did make a recommendation that services need to be improved for adults, we couldn't really go further than that because it was outside of our scope or our mandate. Yes, Karen, I'm trying to focus, but that was really silly. So the recommendation for numbers of hours is squarely the clinician. So families will be assigned a care coordinator, and I'll talk about that role a little bit later. And that care coordinator is going to meet with the family, look at their situation, all of their reports and assessments to date. And after talking with the family, they're going to sort of work with them and give them recommendations about how they should look for services in their community. And they're also going to do some forecasting. And this is really an administrative function to help the ministry project how many kids are coming into the system and when. So they do a forecast of the family's budget. But then the family goes to the clinician and gets an assessment, and or it might be multiple clinicians. So let's say you go to Tracy Lindblad, for instance, and she is a speech and language pathologist, but she also runs an ABA center. And you meet with her and she says, I think your kid needs 20 hours a week of ABA and maybe 2 hours a week of speech therapy. If that amount that a clinician recommends is more than the care coordinator forecasted, the clinician wins. Okay, and I want you guys to be really, really clear. Yes, the care coordinator will be a ministry employee. I don't know whether I don't know how care coordinators are going to be hired yet. Like we gave a job description for the care coordinator, but the administrative stuff of how they're going to be hired. Yeah, there are 25,000 kids that need to be seen by these care coordinators, but like social workers, I mean, they often work with a caseload of, we heard somewhere between 70 and 90 kids. But the important thing for you guys to understand is that the clinician gets the final word. And in my view, that's what really makes this a truly needs-based system. So yeah, that's the answer to number 4. Question number 5 tonight. Okay, there's a lot of questions coming up in the comments here that I can't keep pace with and do the prepared questions. Can somebody answer Kimberly's question and just drop a copy of a link to where the report is posted? I know some of y'all know where it is because it's on the ministry website. So question number 5, if the new program starts April 2020, do we hit the ground running and will more children move into service come April? This is a really, really good question. And it's one that I have a much better appreciation for now having served on the panel. I said today in a couple of the interviews that I did that my big takeaway from the panel, and actually there were many, but one of my big takeaways was a deeper understanding for the systems level challenges in running something like the Ontario Autism Program. It's a huge program with lots of moving pieces. And as implementation rolls out, there's 3 cohorts of kids that need to be brought into this new program if in fact it's fully implemented. So we have those of you that that were receiving behavior plans under the old COTO model, or what we affectionately called at panel, the so-called legacy kids. So these are the kids that had full funding, needs-based, and they had their contracts extended once with an announcement in March, and then they had their contracts extended again. They will complete those contracts, and before they complete those contracts, they'll be assigned a care coordinator who will help them transition into the new program. So that's one cohort. The second one is, of course, the kids who have been receiving childhood budgets. So they're going to be transitioned in. And remember, some of these people then will be coming into the program at different times. If your kid is a legacy kid and your funding extension went to June of next year, for instance, I was talking to somebody today for whom this is the case. They're funded through until June of next year. So they stay in that old OAP model until June. Then they meet with a care coordinator and they transition into the new OAP. But you may have a kid who has a childhood budget, and they've received their check and they've spent it. They may be able to come into the program at a different time. And I still have a lot of questions about how that's actually going to happen. And this sort of goes to a question that's that comes up later. For those that are receiving a childhood budget, does this mean that they are now in service? And this is a really tricky bit, because I've never considered the 5K and the 20K checks to be service. Those amounts are subclinical and not acceptable. So that stream of kids, the childhood budget kids, I still have questions about how they're going to come into the new OAP. Kothar, my hope is that there should be no interruptions in service. And our recommendation says that there should be seamless transitions from one program to the other. Of course, the third cohort, and one that I know is anxious today because you probably looked through and you don't see recommendations specific to this cohort, and that is those of you that are on the wait list and have never received service under any of the previous iterations of the program. And so that's a third cohort that's moving. So if you ask me about your individual kid and how and when they specifically will come into the program, unfortunately, and you're not going to like this answer, my answer is, I don't know. You know, the ministry is going to develop a process for that, but here's something that you will be happy to hear. The idea of sending out childhood budgets based on an algorithm, I mean, that is going to have to continue for a little while, but with this new plan, it dies. We are going back to a waiting list that is sequential. And so when you register for the program, you are time-stamped, and the ministry has all of that data. So those of you that are on the wait list or in service, the ministry knows now when you registered for the program. And so I'm hoping to see us make that move finally to go back to a sequential wait list. Let me go to, oh, well, and that sort of answers question number 6. Are they finally going to manage the wait list by who's been waiting the longest? And my belief is that the answer to that is yes. What date will be used to add new kids to the OAP wait list? I'm not going to answer that because I'm not 100% sure. Let me get back to you on that. I can maybe ask some ministry staffers. Again, apologies, guys. I'm not able to keep up with some of your online questions and comments, but I really love what I'm seeing, which is some of you are answering each other, and that's what makes this so fun. So number 7, what does this mean for kids who have never received service or a childhood budget letter? Here's the real thing. Our goal was to build a program that sort of addressed, you know, we've had 2 programs that were at opposite extremes, haven't we, right? We had the COTO plan where everybody had access to everything up until the age of 18, but the wait lists were really long. And then we had the McLeod plan, which was to get rid of the wait list and give nobody anything close to what they needed. Our hope is that this plan lands in the middle. There will still be a wait list, but our hope is that kids will move through. And that means that those of you that are out there who have been sitting on the wait list and just waiting, my hope is that you guys will come into service faster. Next one. These questions all kind of blur together. They're all about okay, Clara wants to say hi again. Okay, she's back. There's 174 people there that can see your Halloween costume now. She's my little devil. She's actually an angel, but...
I finished my makeup.
Oh, okay, zoom in. Let's see the makeup. Okay, this girl is a makeup maven. Like,
yeah.
She...
See, every person with autism has their special interests. My brother is nuts about transit and hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I'm nuts about makeup.
Look at all the love you're getting for that. That's amazing. Okay.
Love you guys too.
Did you do your homework?
Yes.
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 Okay. All right. Are you just gonna hang out and watch?
I mean,
I always do have a devil on my shoulder. So
I mean,
and an angel on the shoulder.
I mean, listen, I'm gonna be able to hear you from my room.
I know.
Like, regardless.
I know. Does Basil need to go out for a pee?
He might.
Okay. Can you do that for me?
I don't know. Can I?
Okay. All right. Back on track. I can hear. I love you too. Look, I made a copy.
You made the photocopy.
Okay. So, let's get to the next question. I just sort of merged 3 questions into one long rambling answer. Question number 10, will there be an implementation committee? Yes, there has to be. And I know that that some of you are probably disappointed today that there were specific numbers and details that you were hoping would be in this report that you didn't find. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is. one thing that Minister Smith, he said today in the House, and it kind of bothered me a little bit, he referred to us as an expert panel. And I love him for his intention there, but the truth is we're not an expert panel. We had individuals who are experts in their fields, who have PhDs and who have published research and who are teachers and experienced clinicians. But then you had goofballs like me who are just like, I'm just a parent, like I'm a teacher. This is really all I am. I'm not an expert. And so it wouldn't have been appropriate for our panel to have made recommendations around specific things like CAPS. So let's go there. Let's talk about CAPS, because I know this is what you guys are worried about. We had a fixed budget of $600 million to work with, and that was a hard cap for us. We were told you absolutely can't go above it. So we looked at a number of different scenarios and a bunch of different numbers, and this plan fits within that $600 million budget. But this isn't a plan that's going to give everything to everyone forever. And Steph, to answer your question, no, the government is going to use this. The government isn't going to set the cap, and this is the really important part that I want you guys to hear. There will be an implementation committee appointed by the minister, and we've recommended that that be done through a transparent process, so that people understand how folks are getting onto the committee. And we also recommended that there needs to be a clinical expert subcommittee. And this is really important. It wouldn't have been appropriate for a table that included me and other parent advocates and other non-experts to say, well, we think that if a kid has severe needs, that their annual allotment should be $50,000. Like, we can't just make up stuff out of the air. It has to actually be based on evidence. Likewise, if we're going to set discipline-specific caps, and we do think those are necessary, then it should be a panel of experts that decide what those discipline-specific caps are. So I don't want to just pull a number out of the air and say, well, you know, I think we should cap ABA at 30 hours a week. Like, who am I to say that? No, you get a group of behavior analysts together, experts in that field. You have them meet, you have them go through a whole bunch of case scenarios, and you have them decide what the discipline-specific cap should be, so that we're sure that if there is a cap, that cap isn't so low that they're recommending treatment that's subclinical. And that was what was really one of the fundamental flaws of the childhood budgets. Was that they guaranteed for kids on the high needs end of the spectrum that nobody was getting therapy that was at an appropriate clinical level. So I hope that, yeah, Annika, I hear you. It is hard. So first, we get an implementation committee and a clinical expert subcommittee. And in the document, you'll see a list of the tasks that we have assigned to that implementation committee, and it's a long list. But the clinicians are going to have to get together in their discipline-specific subgroups, and they will be the one to recommend the caps. So I know a lot of you were freaked last night when you heard the word caps in that Toronto Star article that came out. But I feel really happy that we were able to land things squarely, that that if there must be caps, those will be set by clinicians and not just by our panel. We simply weren't qualified to do that. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Number 11, what types of programs will be offered as early intervention, and will there be a wait list? So I'll take the second one first. The idea is that no, there shouldn't be a wait list for early intervention. The idea is that early intervention services are available to you while you are on the wait list. The types of programs, we stopped short of recommending individual programs and saying things like, I'll use Early Start Denver as an example. That is an early intervention, but I don't know if that's evidence-based for kids with autism yet. It's still relatively new. And again, this is an area where I would want clinicians on the scientific expert subcommittee to make that recommendation. So we're talking about interventions that would be parent mediated, so the parent would be the one implementing these things. So it might be teaching parents sort of the basics of ABA so that they can get started trying some things on their own. But the specific programs and stuff like that will have to wait. Yes, Tracy, the panel recommended parent-mediated early intervention programs. There might, I don't know, it will be up to the clinical experts to decide if they add anything else in. Maria, I'm going to take your question because it's an important one. What oversight will there be if the clinician in charge is the same one treating the client? So we have a number of measures that we've recommended in this report that I think will mitigate against that potential conflict of interest. So somewhere in here, there's a list of like 8 of them. And they include things like, for instance, we're moving towards regulation. Marie, if you're interested, and others, they're on page 32 of the report. So we're calling for the development of clinical best practice guidelines, and of course clinicians will be expected to stay within those guidelines. The development of an OAP provider list, regulation of ABA, standardized reimbursement, so consistent fees, random and targeted audits. So, you know, if someone is over-prescribing at a really high level, that's going to get flagged. And also through the use of program management software, so that when numbers go too high, the ministry gets a notification about that right away. So we do have a recommendation that the one doing the assessment should not be the same one as the one doing the treatment. I think that's in there somewhere. But the other thing is that in some areas, like in remote and northern areas, that may not be possible. But I think we've got enough in there as accountability measures that I'm not so worried about that. Sherry Taylor, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Please, 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 if I say anything that you think is incorrect, please correct me. Yes, and she's right to emphasize Early Start Denver is just one example, and I don't want people to think that that's what's going to be implemented. It'll be up to the clinical experts to recommend that. Thanks, Sherry, for being here. That's Sherry Bridget Taylor served on the panel with me, so I'm delighted to see you're here. If there's any other panelists watching, please pop in and say hi. I started off by saying I'm not speaking for the panel, I'm just speaking for me. So the next question is, who will provide the while you wait intervention supports, and is this a DFO or a DSO program? And my understanding is that both DFOs and DSOs could provide early intervention. I don't see any reason why one would do it and one would not. Sherry, is that your understanding too? I don't think we said that it would be only, there's a group of supports that we call foundational family supports, and those are on page 17. And we recommended that those specifically be provided by the public providers, or formerly the DSOs. Those include things like caregiver training and education, workshops and follow-up consultations, support groups, transitional supports for youth who are aging out, and just sort of information and resources. We do think that the public providers or the DSOs are sort of best positioned to offer those. But aside from that, everything that's recommended in this report can be offered by both public and independent providers. So Kothar, the answer to your question, will the regional providers still exist? Yes. And we've also made some recommendations about some sustainability funding to help them sort of bring back some of the capacity that's been lost. Okay, anyone mind if I just take a break and water? Cheers. Oh my God. Hey, Patrick. I have this little problem. I don't practice what I preach, so a lot of you are familiar with a little motto that we have around here: do what you can when you can, and take care of yourself first. And I really haven't been following that lately, and I need to stop. So one of my self-care strategies is just every once in a while, even when I'm on a live with 154 people watching, if I need to stop and breathe, I will do that. All right. Oh, Kothar, don't be sorry about asking so many questions. That's why I'm here. That's why they pay me the big bucks. Okay. Next question asks, is there still an age cap at 6? If so, how is this a needs-based model? So straight up, there is no age cap at 6. Okay, there is no age cap at 6. The only thing in this report that talks about age 6 is when we discuss early intervention, and that's around page 14 of the document. Remember, early intervention services are going to be provided to families while they are on the wait list. Oh, Nancy, I got the wine here. I'm doing wine. And cheers to you. I miss you, and I hope your kids are doing well and everybody's healthy at your house. Anyway, so early intervention services will be provided to families while they wait. And of course, if they come off the wait list before they turn 6, well, then they stop receiving early intervention services and they go into core services. Okay, so the only reason we mentioned the age of 6 is because early intervention isn't clinically there isn't a clinical evidence base for early intervention above the age of 6. Like, that's why it's called early. Okay, but other services are not age-based. Please, God, let us go back to a place where, you know, services don't change just because kids blow out candles on a birthday cake. So, question 14. How are we doing for time? It's 9:46. Okay, so we're talking about the care coordinator, and this is at page 25 in the document. And the question is, what is the role and credentials of the care coordinator? I can tell you the role. I don't know the credentials. As a panel, that wasn't our job. What we did was we sort of created a job description. So it starts on page 25 and also on page 26. So the care coordinator is, in essence, a case manager, for lack of a better word. So this is something families have been saying for years, and I remember ranting at Kathleen Wynne back in, like, I think it was 2009 when, oh, my cat is here. Would you guys like to meet this cat? But yeah, I ranted to Kathleen Wynne about how families find it so hard to navigate the system because it's so complex and difficult. And, you know, I was lucky enough that once Cliff got to sort of a complex need crisis level, because of that, we were able to access a case manager, and it just made a world of difference. So that care coordinator should be that single point of contact, somebody to answer all of your questions, so that you don't have to try calling like the regional MCCSS office and then your regional provider and then your DFO provider, and you get 3 different answers. We want you to have one point of contact. And then also supporting families in navigating, making sure that they connect you to all of the available sources of funding and support in your community, providing support with navigating transitions, helping families to access sources of funding that they may not know about. And then here's a key one: identifying the need for and support families if they need to access urgent response services. And this isn't something that I've talked about yet, but for me personally, one of the things that I'm proudest of is that there are recommendations in here for essentially crisis supports. We've called them urgent response services. Obviously, you know, we want a program that prevents families from going into crisis because they've been waiting indefinitely for treatment. But sometimes crisis happens. I mean, it happened to Cliff even when he was receiving ABA at the intensity that he needed. Autism and puberty are a really bad mix. Sometimes a kiddo experiences trauma. Sometimes you know, medications stop working. And the thing that we know about autism in crisis is that when a person with autism is in crisis, they take their whole family with them. And so if that happens and the care coordinator identifies that that family is in crisis, now there is a whole other avenue to go. and some extra supports that you can access, like extra respite and more intensive case coordination and those types of things. Sophie, I don't think it entirely overlaps. It just intensifies the support provided by a service coordinator. Anna, I'm looking at your question and I don't quite understand it. Maybe it's one that I'll try to address in a future one. Caitlin, the funding for care coordinators is going to come from the, oh dear, I lost your question, come from the OAP budget. Yes, they will need a lot of people in this role, but there's already a lot of people in the system doing pieces of this job. Really, the plan is to put it together. And I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I think two of my cats are trying to kill each other. Okay, I really have to just close the door. Yes, it's true. Not all cities have this, but the government has, this plan earmarks specific funding for the role of care coordinator. It's costed in to the 600 million. Where will they be a ministry employee? I guess so. I don't know that. Where will the care coordinator be located? Can we meet them in person? Yes, you should be able to meet them in person. I'm glad Annika's enjoying all of the antics of my crazy animals. How will they forecast needs? Okay, so let's go back to this a little bit. So you got your kid's diagnosis, and you know, you're early. It really depends on where you are in the journey and how much information you're able to share with the care coordinator. But whether you're right at the beginning of your journey and all you have is your child's diagnosis, that care coordinator should be able to sit and talk with you and ask you some questions and make some, not clinical recommendation, but make some broad recommendations about, okay, so based on what you're telling me, you know, you might want to, like, here's what you should know about ABA therapy. Here's what you should know about speech and OT. These are the types of different interventions that you might access. And so you might want to start here in your journey. And then, of course, you go out and you meet with the clinicians and you actually get the assessments. And then again, like I said, the clinicians' recommendations are the final thing. The care coordinator is going to forecast, and the function of that is really, and I didn't have a full appreciation for this before, but in order for the wait list to move, the ministry has to have an idea of, you know, how many hours and how much money an individual kid who's coming into the program is going to take in order for them to be able to look behind in the line and estimate how long it's going to be before the next kid can come in. And, you know, when we call our service providers and when we call the ministry office and we say, where's my kid on the wait list, this data informs some of those numbers. I don't know what their caseloads will be and how many will be employed in this role, but I do know this. I know for a fact that a bunch of you who are watching are well qualified to be care coordinators. If you have figured out how to access services and you've navigated the system and you've built up relationships with people in the community, if you are already one of those people that's helping other people in the community, if you're referring them and saying, oh, you need to call this place or this place is really good, maybe this is a job you could look at. I don't know. It'll be up to the ministry, of course, to come up with what the qualifications are and do you need a particular college degree or what have you. Okay, wine break. Here we go. I don't even know what this is. I forget. It's whatever was in the fridge. That's what this is. Number 16 is a provocative question. How come the panel didn't fulfill their mandate of designing the program to treat as many kids as possible within the 600 million cap? I kind of think that we did that. That was our intention. I hope we did that. The next question says, was this a political move? I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. maybe you're asking, why did we design a program that will still allow a wait list to exist? Okay, Clara, can you separate those cats? Because honestly, I think they're going to kill each other. Like, it sounds bad in there. I'm worried. This happens every night. Like, I don't think they're actually going to kill each other, but it just sounds really, really awful. And I don't know if any of you like the sound of listening to me with in the background. So to go back to this question, I think what you mean is, why would we design a program and still allow a wait list to exist? There are, you know what, to really understand that, look at sort of the vision of the OAP on page 10. We weighed a lot of different things. And what we heard from families really clearly was that, you know, they would rather wait and receive services that were clinically appropriate than, you know, zoom into the program, I have zoomies on the brain, really quickly and receive something that's subclinical. And so our hope is that the wait list will start to drop with this program. And we've built a bunch of things into it that I think will help that. But we heard really loud and clear that message: we'd rather wait. I don't love wait lists. I'd love to see a program that has no wait lists. But look, everything in our systems has wait times. I hear you, Jennifer. You've been waiting for 2.5 years and you don't want to wait any longer. I get that. And in a perfect world, there would be no wait list. 100%. And I mean, the OAC has been campaigning against wait lists from the very beginning, right? And I don't want to say that I've come to accept that wait lists are necessary, but look, I mean, any other treatment that you access or that you look for in this province, there are wait lists. And whether I believe in them or, oh my God, Shauna, 7 years waiting, Jesus. I thought we were bad. Our wait for Cliffy was 4.5 years. How will kids be prioritized? Oh boy. Okay. Some of you are asking questions that are really, really detailed. Stacy, I honestly don't know the answer to that yet. But let me try to go back and just sort of stick to my list, not to evade your question, but like I genuinely don't know the answer. Okay, number 17, how can this new program roll out for April 2020 when clinical practice guidelines for SLP, OT, and mental health are required for service? This is a really good point. Kudos to whoever wrote that question. So the implementation committee is going to have to write those clinical practice guidelines before April 2020. So that's the answer. Why didn't the panel submit recommendations for childhood budgets to cease immediately? That wasn't our call to make. That was the minister's call. So we weren't. That wasn't something that we discussed or debated. That wasn't our decision. That was the minister's decision. I mean, I don't know what he might have done instead. I mean, there are some people who say, you know, well, he should have canceled the childhood budgets and gone back to the 8K, 10K thing. But my answer to that is, I mean, that involves a massive system change and a whole other different process. And we were building a new program and a whole other process. To add another one in there would have been kind of chaotic. But anyway, that decision to continue the childhood budgets, that wasn't within our mandate. You know, definitely there needed to be sort of an interim plan, but the interim plan was decided by the minister. Stacey's asking, has the implementation committee been formed yet? No, but there's already discussions taking place about it. I don't know what process the minister will follow for the appointment of that implementation committee. I'm sure there's a bunch of you on here that would love to be on it. I agree that the process last time around for the appointment of this panel was perhaps less than transparent. But I also, you know, do I think the ministers should just let, you know, everybody who wants to be on it submit resumes and then go through the extensive and slow bureaucratic process of vetting all of those people? And I don't know. Sometimes the ministers just got to act. And I would say I trust him to pick the right people to be on that committee. So the next step is the appointment of that implementation committee, and for them to get working on best practice guidelines and to get the scientific subcommittee established, to get them figuring out what the discipline specific caps are, and so on. Question 19, and it's 10 o'clock. Okay, so I might be able to take a few extra. Are there any updates on the status of special services at home? Because yes, respite has been removed from the OAP. The only way you access funding for respite now under this new program would be if you were in crisis. You would be able to access respite funding. The reality is, if respite stayed in the OAP, it would have eaten up a huge chunk of the budget. The other thing is that we heard overwhelmingly from the feedback in, again, the MPP roundtables, the online survey, the teletown hall consultations. People didn't like it that respite was funded in the OAP. That kids with autism could, in essence, double dip. That if they got special services at home, then they could also get more funding for respite through the childhood budgets. Do we have any update on whether the waitlist for special services at home is going to be unfrozen? No. I'm really sorry to say that. So please, please, please keep tweeting #unfreeze SSAH and keep the pressure on. And, you know, if you're looking for ways to release some energy right now, this would be a really great time for a letter campaign to the minister saying, okay, you've received the report, and you know, it's time to start moving on to other issues. And special services at home is one of those places where we can really work with other disability communities. It's a place where it's really appropriate to do cross-disability advocacy, because special services at home is not just for kids with autism, it's for kids with all disabilities. Although picking my words carefully, families of children with autism use a lot of the SSAH budget. Last question on this list, and then I'll try to scroll through yours. What's the timeline for the recommendations that we wrote for the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education? And I'm glad you asked that, because I'm really, really proud of those recommendations. Our panel formed two subcommittees, one on mental health and one on education, and you can see they're really extensive recommendations. Starting at around page 34 of the report, and extra detailed recommendations on mental health that appear as an appendix starting at page 56. So these are extensive and I think really exciting recommendations. They're bold. They're really bold. And we were visited by both the Minister of Education and the Minister of Health at the panel. So do I know what the timeline is for implementation? Haven't got a clue. What I can tell you is that I had a great conversation with Minister Lecce in the hallway today at Queen's Park, and said, you know, I really can't wait for him to read those recommendations, and, you know, asked to go in and meet with him, and he said he would love to do that. So, I mean, that's the thing that's close to my heart. Obviously, I'm a teacher, so I'm really committed to doing more work on autism and the school system. I am really, really happy to say that there are recommendations in there around an end to the use of seclusion rooms, and we saw some really disturbing media stories recently about that, and a process for at least tracking and ultimately reducing, or perhaps one day eliminating, the use of exclusions, soft exclusions and hard exclusions against our kids. And that's an issue that Lisa Kahn has championed through her human rights case, and you know, it's just such a huge issue for our kids. We see We see it far, far too much. There's much more than that in the education section. There's also strong recommendations about revising PPM 140. There's recommendations around establishing an autism education advisory panel. There's also recommendations about an autism and mental health advisory panel. So I really hope that the ministry moves quickly to implement all of those. Okay, so it's 10:04 and there's still 134 of you here. I have, I'm honored that many of you want to participate in this. So let me scroll back and see how many questions I missed, and I'll try to get through as many of them as possible. Did I get back all the way to the beginning? I don't know. Okay, wine break. Oh, okay, so Tiffany asks, how is mental health services outlined in the recommendations, or is that just pushed on the deaf ears of the Ministry of Health? So our recommendation is that the Ministry of Health should fund all of our recommendations around mental health. But there was a practical side of the panel that spoke up and said, okay, but meanwhile in the real world, you know, a lot of our families are experiencing mental health crises right now. And so we did add in those mental health supports as something available to families. So I think those recommendations are really solid. Stacy, why are there no money amounts allocated to each recommendation in the panel report? This is such a good question. So this has to do with the process of government. So obviously we looked at numbers, but in order for a detailed budget or breakdown of the costing to be included in this report, or sorry, in order for that to be released, it has to go through cabinet, and it also has to go through Treasury Board. And that's a thing. That's a process that takes a while. So that wasn't our job to put a budget in here and say this is the costing of the program. We're not elected officials. Nobody voted for us. So it's got to be cabinet and Treasury Board that does that. Rami asks, do we have to wait now to hear from the ministry, or should we follow up with them on the status of the wait list? I honestly would say give them a little bit of time. And I'm going to be encouraging them to come out with something like a frequently asked questions list to answer questions about how the wait list is going to transition from this old system to the new one. And that sort of goes to Stacy's question about how will kids be prioritized to access the OAP if they've been skipped for childhood budgets. Damn, that's a good question. And then children who have jumped the queue, who have been prioritized over others, who have waited longer in the sequential order. Geez, you're making my head hurt, Stacy, but that's such a good question. That is such a good question. You know what I'd love to do in my dreams, but it'd probably never happen, is I'd love to get some of the ministry staffers, not the political ones, but the ones that work full-time in the autism program. I'd love to get them on here to answer your questions. I don't think they'd ever agree to do it, but I wish. Okay, scrolling down, looking for other questions. Joe, that's an interesting point about using special services at home to purchase ASD services. Yeah, I wish there was more flexibility in there as well. I answered Stacy's question about no, the committee hasn't been formed yet. Okay, Samantha was asking, will childhood budgets continue to be handed out while the new system is worked out? I think so. I can't see any reason why they would stop them. But that's a good question to ask to the minister. Could members of the advisory committee become members of the expert subcommittee? Actually, that's a really good question. So we did have several clinicians on this advisory panel, some incredible people like Julie Kautis and Jessica Bryant and Mohammed Sabari and so many others. I don't know whether they'll want to jump from one panel to another, but they could. But I will say this, it is my hope that some members of our panel, the one that I just served on, I hope that some of them transfer over to the implementation committee, simply because I want that, what's called institutional memory. I want people at that table who remember what was said at the advisory panel table. Like, to a certain extent, our advisory panel was responsible for figuring out the big picture of what the program should look like, and the implementation committee is going to get into the really nitty-gritty details, the numbers and that kind of stuff. So I hope that some people who served on this panel will serve on the next one. I won't be volunteering. This committee, this panel that I was on took a chunk out of me. It was much longer than I expected, 18 meetings, and it took a physical and emotional toll on me that was just a lot. And I think it's time for somebody else from the OAC to step forward and represent the OAC on that panel. Okay, scrolling. What happens, Lisa Cohen asks, what happens when the implementation committee is formed and the practice guidelines are set? It's determined that to truly meet the unique needs of each child in the province, the government is going to have to spend more than the $600 million budget. Lisa, I think the answer to your question is contained in the part of the report called evaluation. Something that we felt really strongly about is that there's a lack of data in our field in general. And so once this program is up and launched and we see the uptake numbers, right? So let's say Lisa gets a forecasted budget of $60,000, and she goes out and she spends $40,000 on ABA and 10 on speech and 10 on OT. Once all of those numbers from all of those individuals come back, we'll see where we are. But I have some theories about what those numbers will look like. The budget may need to increase, but we won't know until we see the data, right? And as autism families, we know data reigns supreme, especially in the field of behavior analysis. Other questions? I hope they don't drag their feet. Me too. I saw something in a tweet that I forgot that I said today. Somebody asked, a bunch of reporters asked me, how confident are you that they will actually implement all of these recommendations? And consistently my answer was, pretty damn confident, because, we've really as a community pushed this government into a corner where they want to, get this issue right. They want it to go away. They want to fix it. And it turns out I said something like, I'm fairly confident they'll accept these recommendations in full, but if they cherry pick them, heaven help them. Do you guys ever get this? You say something and then you actually see what you said later and go, holy shit, did I say that? Sorry, oh my God, I just swore. I'm so sorry if any of you have kids watching. Don't swear, kids, it's bad. Oh, Taylor Davies, yes, tracking done for restraints. Did we put that in there? Oh, please tell me we put that in there. I will continue. That's a big thing for me. The use of restraint in schools is completely out of control, and it makes me so angry. I get emotional about that one. But Taylor, I promise you, I will keep fighting like hell on that one. Elsbeth, thank you for raising the issue of adults. And I know that that you asked me about this last week, and that my answer was completely unsatisfactory. I think so much has been lost over the last 9 months since the previous minister, who shall not be named, picked up the OAP and smashed it on the floor into 1,000 pieces. I have a number of regrets about the time that's lost, and the biggest one, of course, is the time that's been lost for the kids who needed therapy during these months, and even before the last 9 months, the kids that were affected by Freezegate. But but Elsbeth and others on our board of directors know that we were, prior to February, we were trying to position the OAC to start to shift its focus from kids, children, to, hey, let's also talk about education, and let's also talk about adults. And as much as, you know, the community's advocacy for children with autism has been fantastic and spectacular and relentless over the last 9 months, we have delayed a really important conversation about adults with autism, because, as you know, autism doesn't end at 5, it doesn't end at 6, it doesn't end at 18. Our kids have this remarkable tendency to grow up. And when they do, they need supports in employment and in housing and in accessing, you know, meaningful connections in their community. And it's a huge regret of mine that our panel simply didn't. I mean, we didn't have that in our scope. We said a couple of things about the need to do better for adults with autism. But yeah, I really want to get back to that work. And those of you that are interested, those of you in the OAC that are interested in starting to advocate more loudly for adults on the spectrum, let's band together and let's start talking about that. Because really, when I look at the strategic plan of the OAC and where I see it going in the future, that's a huge issue on my radar. And I would love for people like Elsbeth and Miko to lead that movement. I'm scrolling. I'm glad you guys like that. Will urgent services be fee-based as well? Well, my understanding is that you'll have an annual allotment of funding, but that if you need to access urgent services, that allotment will be increased. So if you need to hire, say, a respite worker to come in for more hours than you usually need in a non-crisis period, then yes, you'll pay those fees. Are they going to bring providers to rural areas? Aaron, we have really detailed recommendations about the need to build capacity in northern, remote, and rural areas, and I hope that's listened to. Karen, you asked about busing. Oh, I'm so glad you asked about this. In the education recommendation sections of the report, we made a recommendation that in schools, not only do we need better training for teachers and education assistants, but we also need all support staff who work in schools to have a basic understanding of autism. And so that includes the secretaries in the main office and the librarians and the custodians. And one of the things that happened when we got to that recommendation was I stuck up my hand and I was like, and bus drivers. It's so important for bus drivers to be trained. And if I have to hear another story of a kid with autism not being dropped off at the right location or falling asleep on the bus and they miss it, I'm going to lose my mind. Bus drivers have to be trained. And so I really, really hope that happens. Scrolling. There's all these thank yous here. Guys, can I tell you something? There was this real outpouring in the last couple of days of thank yous, and I can't tell you how much that means to me and how much that gave me the energy that I needed this week, both at the final panel meeting, which was only on Monday, can you believe it? And also today to get through everything that we've done. Are there reassessments? Yes, I think. Oh, look at all that love. I see Carrie coming up in that. Thank you for all of the love. Please share your love with other members of the panel, okay? Because there were 20 of us and we worked our butts off. And there are also a whole bunch of other people that deserve thanks. Our two co-chairs, Mark Spolstra and Marie Boutriani, the staff from the ministry that were with us, and I think Carrie, you asked about this. Yeah, they were in with us for all of the meetings. We had at least 4 ministry staffers with us in every meeting. Not all heroes wear capes, they attend panels. Maria, can you put that on a t-shirt for me? That's fantastic. Okay, I don't know if there's any more questions here. Oh my God, yeah, can we give a shout out to, I mean, Janet McLaughlin is just a rock star, and really was a fantastic leader on this panel. I don't want to single any other individuals out though, because honestly, everybody on that panel made a contribution that was absolutely priceless. And if we didn't have all of the different perspectives, the report wouldn't be what it is. Cindy Harrison. Okay, you know what? We have to name all of the people on the panel right now. Oh, do you want to read out the names of everybody on the panel?
Sure.
All right. Shout out to.
Let's see if I can pronounce these.
All right, I'll do that. Marie Boutriani.
Okay.
Marg Spolstra.
Christy Brenchley.
Yes.
Gina Brennan.
Yep.
Jessica Bryan. She diagnosed me.
So that's true.
So I think that's pretty cool.
How cool was that? I was actually sitting beside the doctor that diagnosed my daughter on a regular basis.
I think that's pretty funky.
It was.
Robert Cushman.
Great guy.
Matthew Jason Dever.
The king of dad jokes, for the record.
Really?
Yeah. Oh God, his dad jokes are like better than dad's, and I don't say that lightly. I do not say that lightly.
Listen, man.
Okay.
He's going to need to prove it.
Do you know how to say that last name, or do you want me to do it?
Sure.
Okay, so that's Alex Ekovich. I think I said that right. God, now I'm worried I didn't. Okay.
Cindy Harrison and
Hewitt.
Yes. Okay. Sherry Ketchabaugh.
Well done.
And you.
Me. Yes.
Julie
Coutis.
Marie Lemaire.
Yeah.
Christine Levesque, Janet McLaughlin, Anne O'Brien, Wendy Prieur,
I think,
Sherry Taylor, Mohammed Zuberi.
Yeah, that was our rock star panel.
See, the skills that I have for reading those names.
That's pretty good.
That really comes from doing the guidance call downs.
Okay.
Could the following statements please go down to the guidance office?
Exactly. Well done. Okay, Diana, thank you for calling me out. I went off and didn't answer about reassessments. I don't know if we talk about reassessments in here, but for any clinician following best practice guidelines, regular reassessments are necessary. I don't know what they are for each profession, but I know in ABA, it's usually like every 6 months or every year. She's just like this all the time.
I'm just cuddly.
She's just glued to me.
Listen, man, I haven't seen you since like this morning.
I know, it's been like 10 whole hours.
More than. Way more than.
Leah.
Can you do math?
No.
Okay.
I teach English. Don't ask me to math.
Do you need anything? Water?
I'm not a math teacher. No, I'm good. I need to find the part that Leah is asking about DSO. Let's see if I can find it.
I can make myself look like an egg.
Bingo. Leah, take a look at page 49 under the heading Service Delivery. So it's recommended that families continue to have to stop that. This is my disappointed face. Go away now.
Well, you know what? This is my hyper face.
Go away now. Okay, sorry, trying to answer Leah's question.
I love you.
If any of you wonder, hello. Anika says hello to the egg. She understands.
Hello,
she understands. I hope I'm saying your name right. Okay, DSO, I swear I'm going to focus. It's recommended that the implementation planning process include careful consideration of offering families a choice between receiving service from either public providers, previously known as direct service, or receiving direct funding to purchase the service from independent providers, previously known as direct funding. The panel recommends that the OAP include both approaches with consideration of variables such as cost effectiveness and whether some components may lend themselves better to one approach or the other. So for instance, we've recommended that foundational programs are best offered by public providers. And then all OAP providers should work collaboratively as a community of practice. There's another part, though, where we talk about providing funding to the public providers to help them restore some of the capacity that they've lost. Hey, Cindy Harrison is here. Hey, girl, how you doing? Cindy Harrison was a rock star on the panel as well. And I'm about to wrap up, Cindy, but if in the last few minutes, as I'm fading and getting really sleepy, if I say anything that's inaccurate, please correct me. Cindy, can you help me find what page of the report it was where we talked about providing funding to the public providers to help them rebuild capacity? I can't for the life of me find it, and it's driving me crazy. Lily, you're asking about NVCI training for caregivers, and I don't know what that is. What does NVCI stand for? And Tracy's got me at page 49. What do you think of this comment, Tracy? Are you comfortable with how it's worded? Oh, there it is. The bullet point under what I read previously. Base funding tied to service delivery targets should be provided to public providers on an ongoing basis to ensure the needs of complex, marginalized, and underserved families. For example, northern, rural, and remote areas, that those needs are consistently met. That was, in a lot of ways, actually, no, so I'm going to scrap what I was about to say. Okay, Tracy, I want to talk about why you're slightly uncomfortable about that recommendation. Keep in mind, though, what it says immediately after that, that I take a lot of comfort from, that beyond an interim period, public providers should be funded at the same rates as independent organizations, as long as capacity is not negatively impacted. Okay. Shauna, this was what I was searching for at the beginning. So the panel recommendations on page 49 around service delivery. If only Northern Ontario had a public provider. Well, we better get back to that. Okay, so NCVI is restraint training. Oh, right, nonviolent crisis intervention. Damn it, I've taken that training. I know what that is. We don't have any recommendations in this report specific to that. I can't comment on it further. I wonder, let me get back to you on that. Oh, I have such mixed feelings on it. Okay. Holy crap, guys, it's 10:30 and I've been talking a mile a minute for an hour and a half. Have you had enough? Is there anything else that you just absolutely have to know tonight? If so, get those questions in the next, 3 minutes, because I'm kind of done. I've been going nonstop since 6 o'clock this morning. Yeah. Yes, Lily, I hear you about the need for it for families with severe autism. How's my wine, Kathy? It's pretty damn good. Shauna, will the ministers do their own plan and meetings on the panel's recommendations? I'm not sure. There are recommendations for an autism education advisory panel and a mental health advisory panel. My hope is that they would all work together with the implementation committee. If we really want to see interministerial collaboration, that's what it would look like. So yeah, I hope it doesn't take forever either. I think finally there is a recognition that silos don't work, and that if we're really to serve the needs of children and families affected by autism, then we have to do it in an interministerial way. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful tonight. I think I'm going to stop it there. I'll keep you posted as much as possible, and I think what I'll try to do is take some of the questions that I couldn't answer tonight and others that may come up in the next little while, and and certainly pass them on to the ministry and just sort of let them know, like, these are the things that are worrying the community. Maybe we'll do a poll and say, like, what are the top 10 things that you're most worried about? And then I can take those forward to the ministry on your behalf, and maybe they can start to work with work on creating something like a frequently asked questions document. Anyway, yeah, no more silos. I love that. Okay, I'm gonna rest on Karen's advice. I was gonna go to Queen's Park again tomorrow. I am giving myself permission to take the day off. It's been an amazing process and an exhausting one, but so worthwhile. And honestly, it's a labor of love, guys. You know, there was a lot about today that led to reflection and thinking back on, you know, fighting since 2005, really, when we started on this. But it's not done. I recognize that the work is never going to be done. But that's where you guys come in, right? Really, the next phase of this, the implementation of this report. It's all of you guys that are going to have to monitor it and hold the government's feet to the fire. I already see the next generation of leaders of the OAC, and I do think there are better days ahead. And I look forward to shaving off Tony Stravato's beard very soon. We'll have to talk about whether that happens now or whether that happens only once the program is fully implemented. But if you haven't seen Tony Stravato's beard, check it out. It's fierce. But guys, I am so freaking done. Please read the report a second time. Maybe not tonight. Give it a day and then read it a second time. And then write your questions down, and I will see if I can get other panel members to agree to come on and do some Facebook Lives with me, because, like I said, I don't speak for the panel. I'm just one chick that was on it. I am definitely rambling at this point, so it's time for me to go. You guys are amazing. You are relentless. We wouldn't have gotten today without each and every one of you, and I wish you all a quiet week. And quiet in a good way, not like when your kids are quiet and you know that means they're into trouble. Like, I mean a genuinely quiet and relaxing week. All right? All the best, guys. Keep on being awesome. Bye.